Hey, experts listeners. I want to key you into something that we do very special here at Ops Experts Club, and that's a masterclass. We have a free masterclass called Foundations That Scale. And the great thing about this masterclass is it's for operation professionals who are growing businesses. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an operator is grow businesses on a foundations that's not stable. So in this particular masterclass, we take apart all of the inside pieces of your team, your tech, and how they're using time, and we make sure that you're building on a foundation that's stable. So if you want to check out a great masterclass completely for free, go to foundationsthatscale.com. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Ops Experts Club with Aaron, Terryn, and Savannah. This podcast will take you behind the scenes of some of the finer details of multi-million-dollar companies. These ops experts have dealt with operations for scaling companies and well-established businesses with anywhere from small to large teams. If you've ever been deep into the details of a major company, then you know how much it takes, and these conversations are just for you. Welcome to the Ops Experts Club podcast.
Great to see everybody this morning. Terryn, Savannah, thanks for hanging out. So, hey, we've got somebody exciting on Ops Experts Club this morning. You know, Ops Experts Club is always such a cool thing. Usually Terryn's driving and then Aaron shows up and it's like, then I guess Aaron's taking over. So Terryn, I apologize that I just railroad every single time when I show up on these, but I'm really excited about our guest today. We have the amazing Scott Benham on this morning for Ops Experts Club. Scott has been a dear friend of mine. We've got to work in several iterations and a couple of different clients. And I have been so impressed by the quality of leader that Scott is over and over again. You know, I think that as you work with different clients, as you work with different people that are working on different things, what you find is there are people that do really well with teams and organizing details. And then there are people that don't. Like there are just some clients where like, yeah, they're the one at the head of the helm, but it is just not well organized at all. It feels a little bit like chaos. I love working with Scott because Scott is one of those kinds that when he shows up, I always just think, thank God Scott's on the field. Like, I'm just like, Scott shows up on a Zoom call, Scott shows up in person. I'm like, thank the good Lord Scott is here. Let's intro Scott. Can we do that? Can we bring Scott in?
Hey guys, I'm Scott.
Well, Terryn, do you want to take back over? I took over the wheel. Now you can take it back.
I was going to say you made it 0 seconds without railroading me. So thanks, but I guess this time it worked out. But Scott, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. It's been a pleasure getting to work with you for many, many years. I know us, the Collab team, have been working with Pedro Adao, which is somebody that you also work with for a very long time. So we've gotten to work side by side, deep in the throes together, in person, at events, in more meetings than I can ever count. And we're really excited to have you on the Ops Experts Club finally, and good to hear some things from you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate it. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, you too, Scott. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, what are you doing? Who are you doing it for? You know, kind of what got you there.
Sure. So I'm actually working with Pedro Adao. So, who owns 828 Media, a couple of different brands, 100X primarily, and then Crush It with Challenges. And the way I got to work with Pedro is a really interesting story. I'm not sure if we have enough time for the details. How much time do we have for details?
You can drive the time. You know what we're trying to end by. So I think if we could pack it into this half-hour segment, hit it the way you want it.
All right. So I used to work for a guy named John Maxwell, big in the leadership space. And after I left John, the Lord told me to take a year off, right? Take a year of rest. And in that year of rest, I found this guy, Pedro Adao. Now, the funny thing is every single client I've ever had, my wife has always found them and has been told that we were going to work together. So for those of you who know Pedro, he's a wonderful human being and he has a high amount of energy, which is just about opposite of who John Maxwell is. So when my wife first saw an ad for Pedro, she's like, you're going to work with this guy. God's telling me you're going to work with this guy. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out, man. He's giving away a red Jeep. He's yelling and screaming. He's doing a live stream from his backyard. I was like, this is very different from what I'm used to. So long story short, we had tried to get together a variety of times over Zoom in 2019. It just never worked out. And I was a part of his community in 100X and I was about to quit. And I was like, man, this is this is not for me, right? I stuck it out long enough, but it's for me. And the Lord said, the reason you want to quit is because you came to receive rather than to give. And I said, well, I paid $5,000 to be here. Like, what am I supposed to receive something? Like, what's the transaction happening here? And he said, show up to give and then you'll receive. So I recognized like I'd kind of shown up as if I knew all the things, right? Because I had a very high regard for John. I still do, kind of like a grandfather to me. And so I decided, I'm like, okay, I won't quit, but what am I supposed to do? Like, what do you want me to do to give? What do I have to give to this expert, right? And God said he wanted me to take notes. And I thought to myself, man, I could do way more. I can do way more than take notes. That's what I was supposed to do. So I said, okay, well, who am I supposed to take notes for? And he said, I want you to take notes for Stephen. Now, at that time in 2019, Stephen was like the guy behind the guy behind the guy. Like he was just a member of the community that would coach every once in a while. And I thought, I'm not even getting a chance to take notes for the main show. So I said, all right, I'll take notes for Stephen. And Stephen ended up running a challenge. I took a bunch of notes and I said, all right, Lord, what am I supposed to do with these notes? Right? He said, I want you to illustrate the notes. Now, meanwhile, I thought like illustrations were only for like creatives and people who knew art. I didn't know how to illustrate anything. So I said, how am I supposed to illustrate this? I don't know I'm not going to draw, right? I look like I draw with my foot. Seriously. So he said, open up a Canva account and illustrate the notes. So I made an infographic, posted it in the Facebook group, closed my laptop, and then went to sleep. The next morning, I get a DM from Steven. He's like, dude, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? I'm sorry. Like the Lord told me to take notes and he said for you. And like, I gave him the whole backstory, right? Cause I thought I was getting my hand slapped. He said, this went viral in the community. Like, can you take notes every single day? So long story short, I get a DM from Pedro like 3 days later. And for those of you who know Pedro, this terminology will be it's an affectionate way for Pedro to reach out to you. Bro, you need to take notes for me, not Steven. So that's how Pedro and I got connected. And the next, one thing led to another. And it was early 2020. And he said, I want you to build me a course. Have you ever built a course before? I said, sure, I've built courses before. And we built a course and kind of everything just kind of, I don't know, I want to say cascaded, domino. It just kind of blew up, right? Like I built Pedro a course and then he didn't do anything with it. And then he ran this thing called the 414 challenge. And he asked me to build a course for him every single day of that challenge because he was going to go live every single day. So I'd never built a course before daily. I'd always build it either before or after. So that was new. And then that was an amazing, I think that project, that challenge did $2.7 million. And then we launched Crush It with Challenges with that course that very next month. And that did almost $2.5 million. And then we launched a mastermind on the back of that. And that did $4 million. And then we're sitting here like late June with like a $7 million win under our belts. And we're like, what are we going to do now? So that was how we got our start, which is pretty unique. And obviously, right in the teeth of COVID, which made it all the more strange because we never actually got to, meet each other in person.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like hearing that story. Is it similar to stuff you did for John C. Maxwell?
Yeah. So John was a little bit different, and I have a different kind of approach to kind of how I handle clients. And when I say handle, I just mean a lot of times people come in looking for a role. I really just come in looking for a problem. So with John, it was a little bit different. Like I was actually at a conference of the president who founded the John Maxwell team down in Atlanta. And there was a couple, 1,000 people there or something. And we were going to a ropes course that next morning, or the morning after the first day. And he pops his head around. We have a 3-minute conversation. And he says he wanted to hire me because I talked about Salesforce. Right. So in each situation, like with Pedro, it was about notes. With John, it was about Salesforce. Right. They were having problems with Salesforce. And I was a director of sales. So I understood Salesforce in a deep way. I wasn't an administrator, but like they were using it at such a level. Like if like you walk down the street and you saw somebody wearing flip flops on their hands, you'd be like, that's not how you're supposed to do that. Like, that's not where those go. So that was like, that was how I got my start with John. And then it ended up just kind of continuing to expand and solving more problems. And I became like the director of sales and marketing for the entire, their certification program, which at the time was the fastest and largest, leadership, coaching, speaking certification program in the world.
Wow.
Super powerful. I know when I was introduced to Scott was with Pedro Adao, and that is very much Pedro Adao communication pattern, is like very like short to the point. I mean, like, and so he goes, "Hey man, what do you think of this guy?" Like zero context. I have like no context on what he's asking me. And he just pushes me over this stuff. Right. And so I'm like, I'll jump on the call. I'll jump on a call with the guy and talk to him and see what I think. And like first call in was Scott. I got back on with Pedro. I'm like, listen, man, I'll be honest. I'm not easily impressed with people. I feel like in this industry, especially, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There are a lot of people that have said they've done a lot of things for a lot of different big names. But I'm telling you what, I'm also not bamboozled pretty easy. Like I feel like I can see through it pretty quick. And I'm telling you, that guy knows what he's talking about. That guy's not pulling wool over your eyes. That guy's not trying to pull a fast one. That guy's not smoking mirrors. Scott knows what he's doing. I would lean in because you need what that guy's got. And I think it's just cool to see where it jolts you from there, because I know Pedro's pulled you in deep with the things, he's wrapped you into. And I think it's led into some things too, that God is bringing into your heart and doing some cool things into your heart right now currently. And so we'd love to hear about those things too, Scott.
Yeah, 100%. Well, a while ago, like to be totally real, when I first started working with John, there was a lot there. The belief system I had was I was in the right place at the right time, right? I was on a bus, I had a conversation with the president. Like, what are the chances, right? And so I didn't really totally own like the value that I brought to the organization, because it's a tough role. Like, I'm not a huge fan of titles, right? So, the shirt that I'm wearing is entrepreneur. Like I really like to partner with the visionary, with the entrepreneur, to create and cultivate like what they're looking like to basically bring mission and vision to reality, because most of them don't either know how to do it, have the patience for it, or everything in between. So I knew that like I could do it because I've always operated with the belief like that success is succession. If you can duplicate yourself, that's a very, very powerful thing to be able to do, because that requires a level of conscious competence that not many people have. So, when you're in that entrepreneur role, the challenge becomes you can't do anything else because you are called on to do a significant amount. And I know that y'all know what that feels like, like you're so ingrained in what your clients are doing and the value that you bring that it actually becomes difficult to do anything else. And I just knew that there was more to not to earn or to like impact wise, but I just knew like I needed to train more people, to teach more people how to do this thing. And I started to have some impact on folks had zero background in any of the things that we had done. One of which is, my coworker, Jamie. She was a director of HR at a small suburban bank in Western Chicago, right? Like I pulled her out of the corporate world and I brought her into Pedro Adao land, and thank God she didn't quit, right? But now she's a very, very powerful course creator, product manager. And in this industry, you guys know so well, you have to be diverse. Your skill set needs to be like diverse and deep, which is not always very likely. So like you have the corporate world, there's product managers making 150, 250 a year, and all they do is manage product, and they manage a very small amount of product. With us, it sounds small, but like we pivot so much that those products, it's one of the most difficult jobs you could do. So I just think that's such a fascinating thing. And I was like, man, I need to create this for others. And that's what I'm on the precipice of doing right now.
Wow. Yeah. I like hearing that, Scott. So in all that you've done so far, tell us like your best story, something you learned or taught.
Oh man. I think the biggest thing I've taught is just like to simplify the complex. Like I really pride myself in being able to do that. And the reason that I think it's rare is that most people don't slow down long enough to be able to understand the complex so they can simplify it. So what they end up doing is simplifying the simple and just rephrasing things. And it doesn't actually bring value to an organization, to a department, to a process, to a person, any of that stuff. Right. So the frustrating piece that I've seen in my career is that people want to go fast. And when they go fast, usually the quality is not great, but it takes you to go slow before you can go fast. So I try to teach everybody that idea and to kind of recognize that you can literally solve every problem in the organization without understanding the details of that function, right? So for example, I remember we had a really difficult challenge with, around accounts receivable one time. And it was clear to me that like, we just weren't caring enough about what happened at every single step of the process to care to re-engineer the process so that it actually worked for the organization. Now, I'm not an accountant, right? I'm not a business process management expert or any of those things. It just really requires like to simplify, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? We want money, right? And we don't want to have outstanding balances with our members. So where are all the elements that shift from there? And I think once I teach people that problem doesn't matter what it is, can be solved by pretty much everyone, it creates a level of permission and authority that's pretty, if the person owns it, it's a pretty powerful experience because then they're like really up-level themselves in a way that is just invaluable to themselves, to their career, but also to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Savannah, you could speak to that a little bit because I feel like you've got to work very closely with Scott, especially as of late, live conferences. Like, I feel like you guys serve each other well. As far as Scott, you're a lot of times in person. Savannah, you're serving on the backside of that with virtual. Maybe speak to a little bit of what Scott was saying and some experience with Scott in that regard.
Well, first of all, just touching on the thing that we said earlier, where like if you're struggling with something and then you overhear that Scott's about to enter the room, you're like, okay, we got it. We're fine. Just not even just with the conference, it just happened where we weren't sure like what was a few little details and stuff with like sales and stuff. And then it was like, Scott's in there. It's okay. Like we're going to figure it out. It's okay. But yeah, just what you said about, I feel like the team in general, Pedro Adao's team, watching all of those team members grow just with what you said. I feel like people come into a position and they get wrapped up in that title and they might not know all the details about something that they're being asked to do. And so they think that they're not qualified or they're not like worthy to solve that problem. And so seeing, especially Jamie, like you touched on, like seeing Jamie's growth in your guys' company has been just so fun. But even lower level employees, just seeing them take on issues that that when they walked into that position, they felt unqualified to do, and they probably would not allow themselves to speak up or try. And seeing, even because I worked most closely with the customer success team, like every member of that team, I feel like has stepped into a role where they are like taking ownership of issues and trying to solve it before their team, before they bring it up to upper levels. And that's how it was when, because I first started working with you guys in 414 also, and seeing kind of the growth of everyone in to like become, people that are seeking solutions for things and trusting themselves to be able to fix it, even if they don't know every single, last detail. Because you guys are so multifaceted. Nobody in your organization could ever know every detail about what's going on. Like their brain would explode.
Yeah, I always love the thought when I'm working at like when you're joining a company, an organization, a client, make yourself irreplaceable. That's like your first step. And then once you kind of reach the mountaintop, replace yourself. It's like you've made yourself irreplaceable with them. You've done everything you can. You've built up everything around you. And now slowly replace yourself, utilizing those under you. And then they get to be built up and you get to go on to something else.
Yeah. Dude, that's so good.
So Scott brings me to my last question here. Biggest hurdle?
Honestly, you just addressed it. I mean, because when you're going to the mountaintop, everything runs through you, right? And typically, an organization is looking to you for approval or guidance or consulting, a variety of things. In the case of Pedro Adao, I was leading an entire brand. I was the main trainer. So I was also helping with content direction. So a lot of things went through me. So recognizing there's a point at which you have to make the choice that you need to succeed yourself. And then you need to hire somebody better than you, right? But that requires you to see the potential in the person while simultaneously being humble enough to push the things away, knowing at some point in time, it has to mean that you're no longer with that organization, right? And that's the hardest thing, I think, to be honest, because it really helps to like ask yourself, like, what were you really there for? You know? And it's only then that for me personally, that I was able to be like, oh, right, I wasn't here for me. Like, I was here to accomplish something bigger, and I can't accomplish it anymore, right? It's time for me to move on to the next thing. I think that's been the hardest part. And I'd say, like, if I had to couple it with something, right? Because that's like the, oh, what's your biggest, weakness, like, sort of answer, right? But like the other like most challenging thing would be when you're working with high energy, high visionary entrepreneurs, they pivot like an insane amount. And Pedro Adao, he would tell you that's his superpower. So you have to leave space for pivots while simultaneously knowing that you're going to have to be kind of like the grit that makes the rest of the organization move to fulfill on the pivot I don't want to say real time, but sometimes it's close. Sometimes it's close to real time. And that could be the biggest thing, because when you're driving a lot of decision making within an organization and pivots happen, the number one thing that I see fall beyond the wayside is priority, right? You always assume you know what the priority is, right? But when the pivots happen, that priority shifts. So my biggest lesson that I think I've learned from Pedro itself is how to pivot and how to reestablish priority immediately, because those pivots almost turn your back to a variety of responsibilities that he no longer or they no longer care about. But you still care about, right? Because like we're these holders, and I've been so blessed to work with y'all. Like, you guys carry so much, right? All of you at every stage, Aaron with just the organization. Like, I just remember how alive people became when we just got to go through the EOS spreadsheet and knew that we could put our problems somewhere, right? And knew that they were prioritized and talked about, and there was space for that. And then Terryn, it's like, we moved so quickly and so many changes on the tech side and the affiliate side. We had no idea what was going to work and if it was going to work. I mean, the very switching point of all communication externally happened because of the organization and the metadata that you set up for us within Infusionsoft and all the other things, right? And like the if-then scenarios that happen with pivots are almost impossible unless you have somebody who, with an extreme amount of expertise, a ton of like battle testedness, right? Because it's like, when you pivot, there's so many downstream effects, and to work with a team like Collab team that understands what those are, has history with other people, and then can give us some sort of semblance of what a result might look like. I mean, nobody can do that. You know what I mean? That's an insane amount of wisdom that we got to, like, leverage from y'all. And on the customer success side, I mean, Savannah, like, better than anybody, nobody really gives customer success as much like credit as they deserve. And when pivots come, dude, it is the next level of frustration, right? So you have this organization that really lives and dies to a certain degree by the pivot and how they respond to it, right? So I think that's the biggest thing. And maybe that's this crew right here, right? If somebody can help people just pivot faster, more efficiently, and more effectively, I don't know anybody who can do it better than the Collab team. That's for sure.
I think so kind. And I mean, I would agree. I mean, pivots, not agree with the Collab. And the Collab team, that sounds like I'm patting myself on the back. But I will say, I will agree that pivots, if you don't handle them right, you just threw everybody off the train. Right? Like, if you're not careful, rounding that corner and you just pivoted the wrong way, you just lost all your people back there on the railroad. You know what I'm saying? So I think it is super important to think through implications downstream. And Scott, I'm just so excited for the things that are in your heart with Entrepreneur. I think, I've been following you on Facebook, following the things that are new and upcoming. And, I think everything that you've done up to this point has teed you up for what's coming next. And so I'm just excited to see the things that are coming next for you, man. And I know I can speak for Terryn and Savannah both, and all the Collab team. I feel like Pedro of all of our clients has gotten the most Collab team exposure of anyone. Like, oh my gosh, more bodies. Pedro Adao. But I think that everybody at a with you, Scott, has been so just blessed and grateful. And so Thank you, man. I just want to say thank you because I know you're more than just a client. You're a good friend, and I'm just excited for next steps for you, and I'm excited we're a part of that.
Appreciate that. Appreciate you guys having me on. This is a blast. We could do this for hours.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Ops Experts Club this week. Terryn Turner, I gave you most of the stage, so I'm going to close this out. I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you next week on Ops Experts Club. Hey, Experts listeners, I wanted to key you into something that we do very special here at Ops Experts Club, and that's a masterclass. We have a free masterclass called Foundations That Scale. And the great thing about this masterclass is it's for operation professionals who are growing businesses. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an operator is grow businesses on a foundations that's not stable. So in this particular masterclass, we take apart all of the inside pieces of your team, your tech, and how they're using time. And we make sure that you're building on a foundation that's stable. So if you want to check out a great masterclass completely for free, go to foundationsthatscale.com. We'll see you there.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.